This talk is on binge eating disorder. And say, did I want that drink made all the synthetic stuff in it with the gloopy 1,200 calories? Or did I, after a while, your taste buds are crying out. They can't handle that. And then you want more and more. It's like putting jet fuel in your car. Would you put bad gas in your car? And that's what you're doing. Your brain reacts to all these chemicals, and the sugar in there is driving your brain off into crazy directions, like jet fuel in a gasoline car. So you want the clarity with the water, and I have here again. And I've talked about, like last time, all the amazing vegetables, and I had actually read a list of them where I go to Trader Joe's and I have the packaged vegetables and the packaged greens, and they have everything from broccoli, kale, spinach, all of these things, carrots. They taste so delicious when you educate your palate and it gets wholesome natural foods. That's the way we're meant to be. The rest of this is, talk about in this. We're walking around all day in our addiction to food, especially in this binge eating or whatever it is, or restricting. We're in a prison. We're in a prison of the mind what the corporations told us, what we decided to accept. Look, we could blame everybody and everything in the world, but we have to realize we're the problem. The inventory has to be ours because we made a decision, not everybody. There's a lot of people walking around who have a normalcy towards food. But we made a decision that we were going to make food a higher power. So when we know where the problem is, the solution is that when we are lying to ourselves, so when we get centered, we know the truth. The truth is that the only thing that's really good as far as a drink is this. This is it, okay? Even people say, well, how about juice and stuff like that? Do you realize juice is processed? They take all the fiber out, and they take apple juice or orange juice, right? Here we go. They take it, it's processed. Sugar is processed. Refined sugar comes from a sugar cane. Somebody says, well, it's natural food. Yeah, but it's processed. Oils come from certain plant things and different places, but it's when it's processed, meaning that a tablespoon of oil is 150 calories, whereas, when you process, so the sugar is pure sugar. So eat it with this. It's just totally healthy, and it's amazing what it does to the body. Since I started eating healthy, the benefit is all the diseases I had, the major ones, I had the heart disease, I had the high blood pressure, high cholesterol, among a lot of other things. And it all went away. I was taking all these medications. I'm on 0 medications. I'm a lot older than I was when I exhibited these diseases. Maybe 10, 15 or more years ago, I started getting them all. And now I have none of them. And it's the type of food I'm eating. I eat a whole food plant-based diet. I really, truly believe that's very healthy. But I always say to everybody here, I don't want to tell you, you make your own decision, but basically it's what we put on the food that's the problem. People used to eat years ago wholesome, whole food. They didn't have the processed food, the fast foods, and the restaurants today. It's ridiculous, right? And we got to be careful. Even you go to Whole Foods place like that, they have this salad bar. A lot of the stuff in there is totally filled with all kinds of salt, oil, and sugar. It's called salt, oil, and sugar. This talk is on binge eating disorder. If you have a binge eating disorder and want to help get the message to others, press the like and subscribe buttons. Now back to our talk on binge eating disorders. The dishonesty is feeding our body these poisons. If you want to get centered. But anyway, here's an apple and an orange, and God's gift. There's more micronutrients and things in here. And also, the sugar, people say I'm addicted to sugar. There's sugar in here, but it has amazingly healthy because it has all the vitamins and fiber and it's slowly released. These things are amazing. And when you start to celebrate, I celebrate so if I go off a little bit, I just say, Bob, okay. And you learn from it. Like I heard before the meeting, someone said. It was like you learn and you say, and you look at, objectively, and you sit there, but you're centered with that higher consciousness. Just like, look, we say we have to make amends towards people, right? It's the same thing. It's the understanding, comprehension that we have. And the same with the food. We have the eternal presence. So as soon as we're thinking about what we did last night, even 5 minutes ago, we're off center. And then we're back into our addiction. Because what we're doing is we're getting out of the moment. When we're eating talk about the addiction, whether it's alcohol, drugs, or when we want people to appreciate us, that's not true. That's all false because the joy, it's momentary pleasure. The only joy and happiness will come from within. And then when we're centered, we wouldn't want it. We wouldn't have to go to the other things to find pleasure like the food. So we're in the present. So even if you have an addiction to food or whatever it is, if you're in the present, the addiction is gone in the present. If you're directly in the present. You're in the addiction when you start going to the past. We also have the problem again, of course, we do have analogy of the body. I mean, I don't want to forget all of these basic things, and sometimes they call it alcoholic foods. But again, the corporations put in those allergens in the foods. So today it's like 10 times worse than it was years ago, because people are 40, 50 pounds lighter than they were today. I mean, I don't have to go into all the diseases and all the problems that it causes. So we have a solution here. So we have an answer here. I mean, if we want to pick up the simple program, and step 1 says, why does step 1 say we're powerless? Again, we're constantly trying to take our power back. When we ever get self-pity, remorse, shame, or guilt about what we did, we're taking our power back. So when we believe that there is a source within us, what do you think? God made us perfect with physically, our heartbeats, our breathing is perfect. Don't you think in the hypothalamus is a perfect thermostat in the way we know there is? Some people stay within a pound of their weight their whole life and they know just what to eat. There is a perfect thermostat, but we, through self-will, we try to take charge. And that's where we get off center in the thermostat. And, also your stomach, when you're full, but when you're in the fear and your thinking is off. That's where, step 11, prayer meditation. And what happens when we do this, it's amazing to me. In the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous, talks to me directly about the food and the 10-step promise, and a lot of meetings I go over that. But I also go back to the Bible, where what is it written supposedly 5,000 years ago? They put the word gluttony in there. Gluttony towards, again, our problem with the food is related to our problem with everything else in our life. We want everything to control it. We want to find pleasure on external things. Looking there for the food. The ego says, I got a great idea, I'll eat more food. But we replace that with what the truth is. The truth shall set you free. The truth, but you only can get to the truth when you get out of the ego and the self. Again, the ego says, I got to control people. I got to get more people to like me. I got to control this food. All we have to do, it's a simple program, get centered. Just sit. I went to a meeting, this nun was there, and she always said, when it came around to her turn to share, she didn't say all about a problem. She just said, just sit. That's all you have to do. And I told the story of a guy at one of the meetings. He went up to this place where it was a religious order, and it was hard to get in there for people, for alcoholics and rehab center. And he went in there, and he went all the way up to the center. It was far away. It was about 6-8 hours away. And he got up there, and the clergy person who was there said, okay, you're here now. Just go in the room and sit. And he had him sit there. And that's all he said. Just go. And the guy came back out. He says, well, what do you want me to do here? You just go in that room and sit. And that's the whole program was that. It's about letting go and getting that consciousness that will answer all our problems. We'll intuitively know. And then that'll bring us right to the 10-step promises. This talk is on binge eating disorder. If you have a binge eating disorder and want to help get the message to others, press the like and subscribe buttons. Now back to our talk on binge eating disorders. Pretty amazing. This 10-step promise is how it's directly related to the food. We cease fighting anything or anyone, even alcohol, even food, even people, right? It all has to do with people, anything or anyone. What else does that mean? The first step says, we are powerless over, and you can put anything in there. It's food and Overeaters Anonymous, and it's alcohol and Alcoholics Anonymous. Then it goes on to say, we react sanely and normally. You got to ask yourself, are you reacting sanely and normally? But it does say in the doc's opinion, he says there, after a while, for the alcoholic, that becomes the only normal way of life. Your only normal way of life is lying to yourself and being in the addiction. You're in a prison. You're like in solitary confinement. Not you, but we are when we're in our addiction. We believe this nonsense, and it's worse than somebody who's actually in physical solitary confinement, mental solitary confinement. It's because of misery, depression, being upset. And we'll find this will happen automatically through repetition. We go to our program, the higher power. We will see our new attitude towards liquor or food has given us without any thought on our part. It just comes. That's the miracle of it. We are not fighting it. That's the problem. We're always fighting it. Neither are we avoiding temptation. We feel as though we've been placed in position neutrality, safe and protected. We have not even sworn off. Instead, the problem has been removed. Now I'm just going to say one more thing, and I just want to say here, people talk about being recovered. They say, how could you be recovered? Recovered, in the first page in the book, it says people who have recovered, and throughout the first part of the forward to the first edition talk, we who have recovered from a hopeless state of mind and body. People say, how could you be recovered? But it says here, we are not cured, but we are recovered. What we really have is a daily reprieve contingent on the maintenance of our spiritual condition. It's telling you that. When we get centered, so when we're off-centered, we can't try to control. We can't do it. But we can get spiritually minded again and read. I could read one paragraph or one page in this big book and it brings me to it. But again, if you want to go binge your head off. But realize all the good you've done, that you come to this meeting and build on that. And maybe during most of the day you did fine. Because we get back into that remorse, shame, and guilt. It's all about the ego and the self. The ego's there. It's called the devil, right? We have the bedevilments in this book. It's the devil. Your mind is like a battlefield, right? The solution is getting spiritual and fighting off these negative thinking. But I can't micromanage and try to say, well, if I do this, that will happen. If I do this, that will happen. If I make this amends, if I do that, if I do that. When I get centered, I'll intuitively know, And actually, when I got centered, if I had somebody to make amends to, if I walked in the room, they had to just take one look in my eyes, They said when Ebby walked into the room, Bill didn't even recognize him. When Bill was in Townsend Hospital, Dr. Silkworth said, this is a new man. So when people notice the change in your thinking, because how many times have you made amends to people, or people made amends to you and they do the same thing the next day, right? So where was the amends? So all the whole program is about, and the step 3 tells us, in 1, 2, and 3, we can't do it. So whenever we're attacking the food or anything else with our 10th step, realize it's not about us. We have no control. When we get centered, you'll see that your worst enemy in the world, and you go over and give them a hug. Okay, so you wouldn't have to do it. It'd happen automatically. The same with the food. You'll know intuitively the right foods. You'll intuitively know. Like when we're centered, we were created to be happy, joyous, and free. We were created to be loving and kind and patient. We were created to eat God's healthy food. You have to ask yourself, how's that working out for you? For years, I had self-help books. I had all kinds of things. I tried diet books. I tried to figure out what to say to my boss at work, my wife at home, my family, what they should say to me or what I should say to them. It didn't work. I wasn't centered. It worked for a moment to this. The diet I was on for a year trying to control it worked perfectly for a year, but I was miserable.